Hello, crypto world. Welcome to the Chart Historian. My name is Justin, and on this channel, I delve deep into crypto charts, exploring chart structures, fractals, and patterns. I'd like to wish everyone who celebrated Thanksgiving a happy Thanksgiving. I had a wonderful Thanksgiving. We went and visited family and had a great time. So during this holiday season, you could see that XRP started moving back up, and I would like to discuss what I believe is currently taking place and how I see things possibly playing out. So just a quick review of the XRP grand structure. I'd like to zoom out and focus on that just to catch you up to speed, and for any people that are new to this channel, introduce them to the overall macro structure of the XRP chart. Okay, so here we are at the very beginning of the XRP chart. This is a great place to start to show you the overall macro structure of the chart, and that is because it is my belief that the XRP chart is actually a repetitive structure that plays out over and over again. Now, every time it plays out unique, and that's because every time a fractal plays out, the height, the depth, and the timing is unique. So it gives the appearance of uniqueness, but structurally it is the same thing playing out over and over again. So at the very beginning, XRP starts with a range-bound sideways time. Eventually, it comes to a point where there's a bull run. At that bull run, it finally comes to a peak, and the decline begins. This decline, this sideways time, it's all structured. Once again, that sideways time repeats, and finally, the next bull run comes into play, so we have another bull run. The decline repeats again, the sideways range-bound time also repeats again, and the next bull run. So as you can see, the structure on the macro level is repetitive. Now let's zoom in and focus on some of these smaller parts of the structure. So here we have the peak, and then we have the decline. Now, I've broken the decline down, or the bear market, into 6 different fractals. Sometimes this fractal A is not there, but in general, it's 6 parts that I label from A to F. F is the capitulation fractal. So let's just quickly glance over these, and I'll show you how they structurally are repetitive. So here we have A. A is a pretty basic, straightforward retracement peak from the initial peak. It drops down into B. B has 2 kind of parts to it, going up to a peak, drops down into C. C also has 2 parts, one here, and then dropping down into D. So it moves up, drops, moves up again, comes to a peak. In D, it moves back up, not very much, then drops, goes sideways, moves back up again, and in so doing, it creates this bowl-type structure right here before finally declining into E. Once it hits the E fractal, it moves back up, and it does another bowl-type structure before declining into F. And if we zoom in on F, F also pulls back up at the beginning of the fractal, has this initial peak, has this little kind of move up here, and it moves down to a point, moves back up, does another little tiny peak, and then finally this swoop down to the capitulation point, which moves below this first little low right here. At that capitulation point, XRP moves back up, but it is no longer in the declining phase that it was in. Instead, it is now back into that sideways range-bound time of the structure. So even in this structure, there is a repetitive sequence. Let's quickly move over to the latest decline, and I will show you the repetitive nature of this structure. Okay, so here we are at today's decline, or the most recent decline. This took place in 2021, and as you can see, here is the initial peak. It declines. Here is that A retracement, declines into B. B moves back up into B. You can see the 2 different parts of the B structure right here and right here. It declines, moves back up into C, and you can see also the 2 parts to the C fractal right here, at which point it declines into D. Here it moves up, does that drop, goes sideways, moves back up, and in so doing creates that bowl right there on D before declining into E. Once it hits the E fractal, it moves back up, and it also does a bowl before declining into F. And in F, we have that same basic structure. However, there is some deviation that took place on this one, but it's not the first time it's deviated in this way. So as you can see, it moves back up here. Here's that initial peak. Here's that other little peak right here. And then here is that other peak that I showed you at that before doing that swoop, which normally goes lower than here, but this time around, it did not go as low as here. And we get this structure from the 2017 capitulation fractal, which is really just a deviation of the original structure. So my point here is that these fractals, even though they appear to be unique, structurally they are repetitive. So now that this F pattern, this F fractal has completed, XRP is no longer in the decline. It is now moving into that sideways range-bound time. So price moves back up, and let's go back and examine what exactly happens in this time. Okay, so here we are at the very beginning of the XRP chart, and the XRP chart actually starts with this range-bound time. So as you can see right here in A, it moves up. So I believe this is a fraction or just a part of the final capitulation fractal, the F fractal, but it's just a fragment of it. So price moves back up here, and as you can see, there's two parts to this A structure right here in fractal 1. So overall, there's 3 fractals in this time. I divide those 3 fractals into subparts of each fractal. So fractal 1 has this A part right here that is comprised of really 2 parts to this peak. It drops, and here, this time, it moved quite high into the next phase, that is the B phase, where it winds down to a point before moving back up into the next fractal, fractal 2. So let's move along and kind of get a feel for what this fractal, fractal 1, does. Okay, so we didn't have to move too far because the next fractal 1 is right over here in 2014. So let's zoom in and get a better look at this. So the capitulation fractal is here and moves back up, and as you can see, the 2 parts to the first part of this fractal, part A, and then it drops, and then in this case, it goes kind of flat in part B before moving back up into the next fractal. So there's structurally 2 basic patterns that play out during this time. This is actually one of the more challenging fractals to put your finger on because of that diversity that exists within this fractal. So there's this structure right here where it goes up and then it drops and then it kind of goes flat before moving into the next fractal. The other one, the other pattern that typically plays out is what comes up next in the next time it does this. So let's move along over there. Okay, so here is that fractal 1 we were just examining. So here is the decline that takes place in 2015, and here is fractal 1 of that sideways range-bound time. Let's zoom in and get a closer look at this. So in this pattern, you have, so here you have 3 peaks. A lot of times it's just 2. I don't know if you want to count this as one giant peak and this being the 2 parts to it. Anyways, it drops, and instead of going flat, it kind of drops, continues to drop down, and it finally gets to a point where it goes flat before entering into the next fractal and moving back up. So this here is the other type of pattern that typically plays out. Now, when a pattern plays out, or a fractal plays out, it's never exact, but this structure is a common structure for this first fractal. Now, it is my belief at this point, at least, that today's fractal is looking more like this style, where it comes up in a peak in part A, and then it drops and goes flat in part B. Let's continue to move along and see how these 2 patterns typically have played out in XRP's history. Okay, so here we are in 2017, and this decline happened very quickly. You need to go into a smaller time scale to really see the pattern, the typical characteristics, the repetitive characteristics of these fractals. However, here we see in fractal 1 of this sideways range-bound time, price moves up into this two peak thing. I'm sorry, into this two-part thing right here. Here you have the peak, which is A, and then B, it moves down just like the previous one did. So this one continues to move down, and at the very end, it goes flat. So this is that other pattern that I don't think we are doing this time around. So let's move along and see what the next one looks like. Okay, so here we are in 2018. This is the decline from the current all-time high. This decline started really fast, but as it kind of started reaching near its bottom and going sideways, it slowed down quite a bit. So here is that capitulation fractal. It moves back up in this pattern, in this fractal 1, in the sideways range-bound time before the next bull run. And as you can see, there are two parts to this structure. There is the peak right here, and then it drops all the way down and it goes flat right here in B. So this 2018/19 goes into 2019 near the end is, I believe, a possible guidepost to what we are experiencing today. So as the chart continues to develop today, I will continue to refine my ideas of what it is representing from the past. Today, though, I would say that this is a strong potential. I can copy and paste this onto today's chart. The next time this plays out is on today's chart. Let's move over there and take a look. Okay, so here we are. This is a zoomed in picture. We're on a 2-hour candle. So here is that capitulation fractal, the F fractal, and now we've moved up into fractal 1 of the sideways range-bound time. And as you can see, we've done the first part where it does the peak, and now we've dropped. And I believe we are likely in part B, where it just continues to go flat and sideways. Let me throw on that fractal from 2018/19, and we can see how close it resembles it. Okay, so here we have that fractal pasted on today's chart. It's stretched and to match the current timing, height, and depth of today's chart. As you can see, there is some deviation. So here is the initial peak. In the fractal back in 2018, you had the peak right here. Well, today it's scooted over here. So this should be scooted here. And then, but structurally, it does the same thing after. It goes sideways or flat before moving up and declining. Now, in 2018/19's fractal, this decline took a while to play out. Today's chart, it happened really fast. It dropped. And in my previous video, I mentioned how I thought that this right here could go sideways before moving up. Well, it moved up a lot faster than I thought it would. And I also threw out the possibility that this right here in 2018/19 fractal and this could potentially be this and this. However, I do not believe it is. Normally, as soon as it falls from the peak or the part A, it enters right away into part B. So I believe we are currently in part B of this fractal. And as I've pointed out in my previous videos, this fast drop is actually not a bad thing. It saved us quite a bit of time, the time that it took for it to decline and do all this. So I currently believe that we, at the moment, are in part B. So that would be somewhere in here. You know what's interesting is if you take this right here, this structure right here, copy and paste it onto here, it could potentially give us a clue to what this sideways kind of flat time might look like. Let's do that real quick. Okay, so I grabbed this section here and copy and pasted it over here. Let's zoom in and get a better look at what this looks like. So as you can see, there are some similarities. You have this bounce here, you have this bounce here, and now you have this move up here. And it even resembles what took place in the fractal. So you have this sharp move up, this kind of going sideways, as you see in today's chart. So if it continues to play out, I would expect something to kind of play out something similar to this. Now, every time a fractal repeats, it's never exact, but this could be a overall guidepost as to what we could potentially see in this section right here. And the cool thing about this is if this does indeed play out, that could potentially put the end of this fractal 1 around December. So we'll have to see how this plays out. Of course, this is speculation. It could do something different, but there is some similarity, and it's something worth keeping an eye on. Well, folks, that does it for this little update. I hope you found this video helpful and informative. If you did, it'd be much appreciated if you smash that thumbs up button. If this type of technical analysis is something you find interesting, you should hit that subscribe button and that bell button. You'll be notified when I put out new content. I like covering XRP. I cover it regularly. And as this pattern develops, I will continue to cover it as well. One other important thing, I am not a financial advisor, so none of this information that I present here should be used or construed as investment or financial advice. You know, in technical analysis, you're dealing with the unknown, so there's always the chance that you're wrong. It could do something different. So there's always that side to any technical analysis that you should be aware of. I'm so glad you caught this video. I hope you catch my next one. Have a great day, and bye for now.